now, Mr. Serling.
You've probably run across these penny machines that tell your fortune. You put a penny in, and out comes a card. Only this particular machine, which you'll see next week, is a little bit unique in that the fortunes that it tells happen to come true. A most intriguing tale called The Nick of Time by Mr. Richard Matheson, and you're invited to partake of it. Thank you and good night.
What do you think his fortune said? I was so disappointed he didn't read it out.
I know. I was going to say, this is the first time I've been disappointed at a teaser. I wanted him to either look down and have the stricken look on his face, or to read it out or something, but...
Yeah. He should have just held it up and it had Twilight Zone next week at whatever time. That would have been fun.
So we've got Shatner in there. This, I don't know. I'm kind of getting Nick of Time and then, fortunes being told. Kind of, I don't know what they're kind of going to infer here. Almost feels like a bit like previous with the printing kind of prediction machine that we had from...
Well, I mean, there was a devil head on the print
exactly,
on the fortune machine, and he mentioned a Mephistophean bargain, so
Burgess Meredith
we're going to get
well?
a bit of a repeat here.
Is William Shatner Burgess Meredith? Wait a minute. Never seen them in the same movie together.
Was.
Yeah, it's true. What do we want to pre-rate this as?
All right, I'll jump in first.
Go on.
At the risk of tainting opinions.
We can get.
I'm going to pre-rate this a 5, and I'm not married to it. I think there's something to chew on in there, but if you're not in the mood to chew on it, it can also be an extremely thin plot. So 5, right down the middle.
Right in the middle.
I'm going to go with a pre-rating of... I'm going to give it a pre-rating of 8, because guess what? We may mock Shatner a lot, but he is always at least entertaining to watch. And because I think this is going to be one of the few times I'll have seen anything that isn't Star Trek, that isn't Airplane either. So I have a very limited scope of his acting in the team. Am I? Am I really?
It has its moments.
So I'll go for an 8. Guess what? I'm optimistic, and we're back to the 25 minutes, so I have faith that will be structured strongly. I'm here for it.
Actually, Boston Legal is actually really good, and he's good in that. So there you go. But anyway, Dan.
So we, for those of us following along, we've just finished the Printer's Devil, and during the review of that episode, I made the statement that were it not for Burgess Meredith's character to bind everything together, there would be nothing to this episode, and it would have been unwatchable. And now here we've got a potential for an everyman in William Shatner sitting in a diner and focused entirely on a just inanimate object to drive the plot along. I do not have high hopes, and I've seen Shatner at his best and at his worst, so it's really a coin toss with him. But from what I can see here, I'm going to start it at 3.
Ooh. Would you say it's a penny toss?
Yes.
What does your fortune say, Dan?
Says signs unclear. Roll again.
It says sabotage.
Sabotage. I don't know. I'll go for a 6.5. That's my new 7. It's a 6.5. That's me straddling the line before. I've got some hope. I'm going to get some entertainment out of Shatner. I know I am, because I'm going to be watching him like a hawk to see all those Kirkisms in him. So we're definitely going to have some of that in there. But 6.5. So how about we go and judge for ourselves, and let's go and watch the episode.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hello and welcome to the Holodeck, our enduring journey through things that are non-Trek, and continuing our adventures through the Twilight Zone. We are brought to A Nick of Time, featuring one young William Shatner and written by one Richard Matheson. For the Star Trek fans among you will know he wrote the very excellent The Enemy Within. Well, excellent is a contextual word. He also was responsible for writing the book I Am Legend, along with many other science fiction classics. So a well-established science fiction writer writing for a well-established science fiction show. Otto, what brought you to this episode to bring to us?
All right, so we had our classics bucket up front, the first, 5-6 episodes. We just got done with the incredible Burgess Meredith bucket, and now we're diving into some Star Trek alum, of which there are many. In fact, I think just from TOS, there's something like 60 different characters that have appeared in both shows. So we'll do a couple Shatners, we'll do a George Takei, and so that's why this one is here.
And we did have a very young Shatner. This is 7 years before TOS aired, probably about 6 years before he shot the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before. And he's definitely younger. I believe that is his original hair. Are we allowed to talk about his wig on it? I feel like no one ever does. It's always referred to in vague sort of like bylines, but yeah, no, very young Shatner.
Look,
but
we can joke about wigs and girdles, but he's a sexy man. All right, so especially at that age, strutting around.
Yeah. He was very young. He definitely had a lot of moments where I was just like, "Oh yeah, that's young Shatner. That's young. There's a Kirkism. There's things we associate with TOS era Kirk, especially before he kind of goes into the movie."
He was cradling that machine like he cradles like most women and Spock or McCoy.
Yeah. Well, then he grabs his wife by the shoulders, and yeah, we get some other images there too. So
okay, let me ask you this, guys. How superstitious are you? Do you have any superstitions that no matter what, no one will ever convince you otherwise? Does anyone want to volunteer?
No, actually, I would say I'm firmly not superstitious. I don't believe in ghosts. I guess I believe in luck in kind of an abstract term, but I kind of believe more in the case of guess what? It's probably just a confluence of events. I don't gamble as a general rule because I know I'm not good at it, and I know it's just a case of like calculation. Odds,
I have seen you
like...
pull many Star Trek Timelines packs. So
yeah, guess what? That's disabused me of the idea of luck.
Yeah.
Nothing will disabuse you quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't really believe in fate or superstition. I don't have much of a belief in an afterlife. I don't. Each case, guess what? I make the choices or I don't. That's the way it goes out. I don't generally believe that like you can predict these things. I don't. Yeah, I just not much sway over me. I would say I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. So, what about you guys?
Yeah, what you said kind of hit home, stars, about opening enough packs it'll disabuse you of the notion of any sort of luck. And I think that luck is the idea of luck and superstition is something for the young, and as experience in life and the results of your actions will teach you over time that you have more control over things, and that's the goal of the episode, of course, to show us that. But no, I find maybe I've put a little bit too much faith in positive thinking, but again, that's an outward thing, and you receive back what you give. So, if you could say that's a superstition, that's fine. I still subscribe to that, but that's about it.
Audrey, are you superstitious at all?
No, not at all.
No.
And this episode I mentioned in our pre-rating. You could go a little bit deeper if you wanted to, and they do take aim at superstition or maybe astrology if you want to go that route. I don't think it's really much of a gambling episode. They have more pointed ones at that, but you could take it that way if you want. The issue is my issue with it is I'm not sure if it's self-aware or not, because every time they put in a penny and get an answer out, it is a generalization, and Pat Breslin's character even mentions that. You're just putting in money; it's giving you generalities. But every time they do that, they amp up the music, and you get a dramatic look, and then by the end, even she's buying into it. So I'm not sure if they're having a laugh at people who really buy into that kind of thing, or if they're trying to build attention. And I think by it straddling the line, it kind of comes across as not hitting either one very accurately. And I kind of wish it had taken a stronger stand on that, because I think that is something that you could, this is not a giant social injustice episode, but it is something that I think is worth talking about on balance.
I want to come back on that point, but idly, you superstitious?
The only superstition I believe is that our phones are listening to us and they are sending us relevant adverts. That's my superstition that I'm pretty sure is based in fact. But yeah, no, that's the other than that. No, I am pretty logical.
Yes, you like to think so. So, I think that this may not have been a particularly prurient episode at the time. I do, however, think it's actually become more applicable over time.
Fake news, man.
Because if you think about the way that people are influenced by just, like you say, fake news, or just by little things like, like you say, astrology, or like freaking those stupid little quizzes that you get in romance magazines, the amount of little things that can set people off in little paths. Yeah, you never read those? Like where it's like you circle these and it'll be like for your like your bow or whatever, and it's like, are you a good match or not? Like in Cosmo and shit like that. You never been bored at like a doctor's office and gone flicking through what they got? Come on, man.
I have a mobile phone.
Yeah, well, that the one you think is listening to you.
Carry on. Touche. Anyway, resume.
But I actually have to give this episode credit, and I actually have to say that like Shatner here really works for me, because Shatner is very good at portraying like a manic, strong, driven personality, almost like Kirk in TOS, for example. We're going to be talking about it a lot. Is in some ways obsessed with the Enterprise, with with promotion, with ambition, with becoming the best that he can be. That is in his way an obsession, and you obviously get episodes that drill down on that, like the one literally titled "Obsession" about the Dicronian crowd. And here they play on his youth and his very all-American look, because guess what? He looks like he could be in like a 60s Greaser movie. Like, he's got the perfect hair. Guess what? He's like slimmer than he's ever been. He's a good-looking fella. And if you didn't know he was going to be Jim Kirk, like, we wouldn't have quite as many associations of him as we do, because he wasn't at this point. And I just appreciate this deep dive into the idea of, if you have a slightly certain type of personality that is a little bit suggestible, that is inconfident, because like his partner like patches on this, like, you haven't got enough confidence in yourself to believe that you made these things happen. You believe it was luck, or you believe that fate is like you conspiring. You don't believe in yourself to do it, and that's partly where that has any power. Like, astrology only has any power if you allow it to, because guess what? They're also in generalities. Like, if you listen and read through them, they are written with such specificity, but also enough generality that they can apply to anyone if you're in the right mood set and in the right mindset. If enough bad things have happened to you in the morning, you'll believe anything someone tells you. If enough good things have happened, guess what? Oh, I'm having a lucky day. And I just appreciate that he's this like very young, kind of driven individual, and then you just tweak the dial a little bit, and like, I appreciate the ambiguity of them playing it as, is this thing just speaking in generalities? Because they make a point of never going after another one of those machines, because I feel like that would tip the hand. If they had popped a quarter in one of the other machines and they'd gotten out an identical kind of fortune, be like, okay, well, either it's all the ones in this cafe or they're all just like that, and then it breaks the spell. But that single one is the one he obsesses over. And then the fact that they bring it back with the older couple later on, like, it leaves it ambiguous as to, is this like your actual supernatural power, or is it just a case of, don't be a fucking idiot. Of course you can leave if you just make the decision. It's all down to you and your propulsive force. That's what actually matters here.
It gave me.
But that's
sorry.
Go ahead, Elio.
It gave me sort of like vibes of, the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, because it was basically all rife from paranoia. Like, it's all about the human condition, about how your mind will fill in the blanks to where you want to assume
anxiety,
things, and
really.
that is like you've said before, is a lot of that going about today with politicians or famous figures coming out saying generalized statements, and people going like, well, I take it this way, no, I took it this way, and it's the human brain is very good at filling in the gaps for where your personal biases want it to go. Sorry, Dan, I cut you off. Please go.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, and I think that a large part of why the episode actually succeeds, and I did like this episode. I think it's the fact that it's just such a silly thing. It's a napkin holder bobblehead. It's such a trinket. It's so trifling that you are in on the joke, and you see Shatner, hugging it and cradling it, and it's like, how could I possibly ever be in so deep on something so silly? And then again, as you turn to the astrology page in the newspaper, as you call up your Miss Cleo, hey, it's Miss Cleo. So I won't say everybody's got something, but that was a great way to lead in the episode. What do you believe in? And if you don't believe in anything, maybe something will take that place.
So I agree. I like Shatner. I like young Shatner. I like Shatner in general. And so this being on a YouTube channel called Trek Time, if you're watching this, you probably know James T. MFer Kirk, captain of the, and he's got the command wrap shirt on, and he's dynamic, and he's energy, and he's very halting in the way he speaks, and all the parodies over the years, Jim Carrey and others. It's real hard to wipe that from your mind, but try for a minute, because I actually think I think Shatner's a fantastic actor, but this young version of him, the halting way he speaks is such a plus. In TV, you don't stomp on lines. If you flub, they do a retake. And the way he speaks, it comes right up to the edge of stomping on Pat Breslin's lines. He'll stop himself mid-sentence, restart. And it has such a natural energy to it that it's like, all right, I'm finally... this is season 2, episode 7. And we get a lot of very, like, British, Victorian, dramatic, strong, like, leading actors, and they all speak flourishingly. And then you get this guy who comes in, and he feels a lot more real, because he feels like a real person. And we even said, Dan, I'll call on you to talk about this in a second. His wife, who stars called his wife, and I called Pat Breslin's character because we don't even remember her name, is so flat next to him. And up until right at the end, she gets a little manic when she follows along, when she falls down the path with him. But up until then, it's like you could have put a cardboard box next to him, and it would have been Shatner and the machine, basically, kind of carrying this episode. And, I don't want to rag on her too much, because she actually, script-wise, didn't get a lot. She had a lot of one-line responses to Shatner. But, Dan, you commented on that, while we were watching. So talk to me a little bit about Pat Carter.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, how do you be number 2 to somebody that's a rising star like Shatner? He really steals his scenes, and it's got to be difficult. And she does her best to react to him, but I think that she's. I think I saw in her IMDb page a lot of soap opera work, which kind of makes sense. But that was who was hiring at the time, and I think she could hold the screen with him. But I there's just no way that she could steal the show, and it's tough. We've watched some other episodes where there's real great chemistry between the leading actors. Just wasn't present here. I don't know if it was necessary, though, because the real love affair is between Shatner and this stupid little napkin holder, and maybe that's
the
by
love
design.
affair was between the diner guy and the steak, the chicken fried steak.
steak.
That was the real love affair.
Twice, not once. This is like, you sure you don't have
yeah,
the
they had to
chicken
do the
steak?
callback. It was so important to the plot. We gotta get our chicken fried steak. Yeah, a lot of, I don't know. So here's an example also of an episode that was short. We've watched at this point in our watch through, we've watched one double length episode, one that was with commercials aired at an hour. This is back to our I think 22 or 23 minute runtime. And it just felt so padded, where he's cashing out with the cashier twice, and we get to talk to the mechanic multiple times, and so I think that here is an actress. So we're talking about Pat Breslin again. Here's an actress who is cashing a paycheck and putting in a workday. The author of the story, the writer here, again, capable of fantastic things with I Am Legend, but again, just paying the bills with this episode. There's certainly, I think, the only real memorable or notable thing is just the image of the devil bobblehead and of course, William Shatner.
Well, you know what? I have to give props to the prop work, because I appreciate that little napkin bobblehead holder, because it is just the right blend of that is cheap and ugly looking and chintzy enough that it would be in like a little fucking place in Ridgeview, Ohio. No one would take it. You'd look at it and go, and guess what? Someone's probably ripped the head off of it sometime down the line. But it's also just specific enough and just a little bit unnerving enough, with the slightly melted head, the glimmering eye, like the little details and slightly off paint. It's just a little bit disconcerting, just enough that it looks a little. And I also appreciate the generalities of the fortunes that it obviously is, like, will he love me, etc. Just like this kind of thing where, guess what, if I was sitting down that thing, I would probably put a penny or two in there just to kind of see what it would pop out. It's those kind of thing like, this is chintzy enough, I would do it.
That's why you like fortune cookies from your Chinese, don't you? You just want to pop it open. It's a fun little novelty. It's something to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
go on.
No, I won't say that. Okay. I want to talk about language and the evolution of language, because we're watching a black and white. And, that's going to come up. We've had some extremely fun sayings. Kentucky windage. That makes the cheese a little more binding. Last episode, we had a gloom cookie. I don't know what a gloom cookie is. In one of my outros, I said credits to Navy beans, which Idol corpsed at. I pulled that one from a TOS episode. And then there's other lines. And Stars knows which line I'm going to tackle here. So we're all on the same page. Shatner's character says, "Stop treating me like a retarded child."
Yeah.
That word had clinical uses in that era, but it was also used as an insult. And let me start, my life, and then I'll go back into Twilight Zone. I have a family member who's on the spectrum, and they don't take kindly to that word. And they've educated me on that. And that's the kind of that's like a playground word. That's the kind of word that my era grew up with, shouting on the playground along with several other slurs because they were more common at the time. And as you grow out of it and you see people who are directly affected by stuff like that, you have to change your tune. It's a thing called compassion. I also have another family member who, when they get upset, says the phrase cotton picker. And I've tried to educate them and say that's not okay to say anymore. And they push back on that. Needless to say, these two family members don't share Thanksgiving meals anymore. So one person who apparently doesn't have an issue updating their language is Rod Serling. Yes, all right, we're gonna have a good one for Serling. According to Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic by Martin Grams Jr., Serling's office received a letter from a mother with a child with Down syndrome expressing her discomfort with that word's use in the show. Serling wrote a letter of apology and told his staff that they should never use that word in such a context again. Another source I saw paraphrased it as, "No one on my staff will write that way again." And I was so excited to bring you another Rod W., and I still think that fits. And then I'm watching another Twilight Zone this week, and I hear that word come up again. It was in season 4, and it was used in a clinical fashion. There was a child who couldn't speak, who was mute. But that piqued my interest, so I went and checked. Sure enough, Richard Matheson wrote both. So I guess he did slip that second one in a better context. But another star said a Rod L turned into a win, because that word came out. He got feedback, apparently wrote a very heartfelt letter and said, all right, guys, let's update our lexicon. So, there's some old stuff, Kentucky windage. Hey, I'll laugh at that all day long. Other stuff, we need to update our vocabulary. And,
listen, Kentucky windage affects millions of people every year. It's a real serious condition. Something needs to be done. Some other fun facts. Author Richard Matheson has been quoted as saying that he also considers the title to mean that time keeps nicking or cutting into each of us as we live our lives. I'm not quite sure what that... It doesn't quite translate, because that was the one thing that confused me about this episode. Like, the nick of time didn't seem to really...
I always thought it was a reference to the car accident they just about dodged.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird one. Yeah, just got there. Yeah, but it didn't
because
seem
that kind of plays on the perception aspect of it. Of it was in the nick of time. Yeah, we the only reason we weren't there was because you decided to wait for that long.
Yeah, it was a very weird one. Excuse me. Richard Matheson, writing in the Twilight magazine, said that he'd wished that Patricia Breslin, who played Pat Carter, Mr. Shatner's wife, had been available to play the wife of Shatner's character in the season 5 episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which will be William Shatner's other episode, which we'll be reviewing very soon. I wasn't quite sure what to expect for this episode, because I couldn't quite work out if the focus of this episode was going to be that the machine was just giving them generalizations and they were being paranoid, which obviously it turned out they were, or whether this was actually going to have some sort of supernatural element. And I was well on board with the first one. They were just being paranoid. It was he had his lucky rabbit's foot and his 4-leaf clover, his 3D printed 4-leaf clover in his pocket. And until then, we had the sort of post credits with the other couple coming in, and that kind of threw me for a minute, because I was a bit like, oh, hang on, this is the big twist. Maybe there's something like this. I'll get into it in my last 5 minutes, but maybe there's something else going. No, they're just utterly paranoid people. But I wonder what you guys were thinking, like, obviously, not you, Otto, but as you were watching the episode, how your thoughts were. No, but you've seen the episode. Come on. How your thoughts were progressing, like, as you were watching it. What did you think, like, because now I'm thinking of a Twilight Zone angle for everything. There's a reason they're in the Twilight Zone, you know. Rod keeps taking us on a detour here, and we're desperately telling him to find another route on the sat-nav.
Well, I mean, I always took the Twilight Zone to mean just like it isn't necessarily a actual parallel dimension where like weird and bad shit happens to you. It's a case of are you familiar with the concept of liminal spaces?
Yes, I love.
Yeah, of like stuff that is you've been there a million times, but you're in there in the wrong context. You're in there at the wrong time. You're at school after dark. You're like, everything feels weird. I'm used to this being full and. I'm used to there being lights. I'm used to that door being open. It throws you because it's ever so slightly off.
An office floor still lit, but no one's there. But you can still hear the hum of the various refrigerators going off, and it's very eerie.
Exactly.
And, yeah,
exactly. That's all it takes. It doesn't have to be a fascist dictatorship. All it can be is the right turn, like the right frame of mind to be influenced by a stupid little napkin holder. And that's what I kind of appreciated about this: is the fact that it was played so ambiguously. Like. I was worried as the thing was going on that it was going to tip its hand and it was going to orchestrate some kind of, just like we had with the Printer's Devil, that it was going to orchestrate something or get too obvious with the message. But they play it all the way to the end. It's like, is this thing actually like manipulating events or is it not? You don't know.
You were just waiting for the diner owner to take off his hat, right? So.
Yeah, I know, right? But I appreciate the restraint. I appreciate the restraint and just the quiet commentary on the fact that these two dodged it, but other people didn't. Because
that's I think it's the main reason why I had such a good impression of this episode at the end of it is because they let you think about it. They don't give you the answer, and it's okay. It's all right for to let the audience take the burden of their own conclusion and to treat the audience as being smart enough to do a little introspection at what just happened.
Okay, let's go on to our bread. Yes, the moment that stood out for you in the episode. I'm going to hijack here, and I'm going to say the moment that stood out for me was the cafe owner, who I'm not quite... He was my flaw in the plot because he was your typical cafe owner, but we spent a good 40 seconds as he went, well, that'll be $1.60 for the sandwich, $2.30 for the steak plus 30p tax. Oh, thank you. And then later on, he's just like, you want some? What do you want? You want some Coke? You want some? There was a lot of time, and then he came. There was a moment where they're having this very serious interaction with him. He just goes, "Oh, can I come clear the plates?" I'm like. Yeah, okay, I get it for a realism perspective, that's there, but it felt very... I was half expecting him to be, the devil of the picture, or the person orchestrating. No, he was just a cafe owner.
Concept for you, however. This plays into the paranoia angle, where it's case of he doesn't know why you're acting like a weirdo. He's just trying to run his goddamn business. Guess what? That conversation about, the Cokes, the bill, whatever... Yes, because that's a normal conversation to have. It's you, Don, that is being a weirdo about it. And then there's tunnel vision, weird peripheral vision, distorted Willy Wonka tunnel that he's going down. That's on him. And all of a sudden breaks between him and his wife. Again, I forget her name. That's meant to kind of break you out of it and go, yeah, he is being silly. That's how I interpreted it anyway.
I also have... a second one as well, which isn't going to supersede any of yours, but there was that scene when they come back into the cafe. You honestly, you won't have thought of this one, because when I used to work at a 50s, 60s bar, and I used to work as the barman, and they used to have bingo on, and people would line up outside the door to get their table for bingo, right? They used to love coming and getting their specific table. They were obsessed with it. If there were a couple of tourists on holiday and they came and sat at their table, they would do exactly what William Shatner did in this episode, and they would look at them through the bars and be like, no, I'm going to be sitting there. You're going to be getting that. Just the way it's kind of menacing, you're in my seat. I need to be sitting there.
I also appreciated the view through the little slats. After I appreciate a bit of directorial work.
So I have seen that look. That is a real look. That's the most realistic thing about this episode. There's just him they sit on my table. How can you do that? Otto, what was your bread of this episode?
I'll get to that in a second. Director Richard L. Baer also did our 9.7 rated episode, To Serve Man.
Yes.
One shot that I did notice, which isn't my bread, but when they first walk into the diner, you see them walk in, and then they pull the camera back, and you see the slats that crisscross of that little compartment. So I just thought that was a fun little scene. My bread is Shatner saying, "Stop treating me like a blank child," and it doesn't ruin the episode for me. On the contrary, I think it's kind of a nice thing to be reminded of that. I think about him saying that, and I think, okay, Andrew, have you updated your lexicon lately? Are you reaching people where they're at? Are you hearing their story? Are you treating them with respect? It's a nice little reminder for me. So I'm glad that I could turn that into a positive.
Dan, bread.
That really
Bread,
strange, yeah, bread. The really strange car accident scene stands out to me. So for anybody that has watched the episode along, before listening to this review, the big crescendo leading into the next act is where they decide to leave the diner a little bit ahead of schedule, and just as a speeding car is coming around the corner, William Shatner grabs Pat Crow. Pat, what's her name? Pat
Carter.
Yeah, Carter. Yeah, grabs her hand and just like drags her 3/4 of the way across the street, right in front of a truck and a car, like just barely making it to the other side.
Like he's been pushing her in front for an insurance scam.
Yeah. The whole thing was just really stilted and strange, and so my conjecture was that they were on location. It was clearly a real exterior, and things just weren't set up quite right for the action shot. But man, that it just seems like he was hell-bent on getting rid of her right there. So
I thought that was the whole point of that scene, is they wouldn't have been in that position if he'd left earlier. It's like he tried to force it as close as he could just to justify his own superstitious belief.
So, maybe. My personal red has got to be. I'm surprised none of you picked it. Shatner just cradling the machine. I loved it because it's like, if you replace that with any other object or vice or something that takes responsibility away from you and makes it so that your life is easy, you have to think about it. That could have been anything. That could be alcohol. That could be drugs. That could be, just like someone who will willingly tell you what to. A friend who will tell you what to do.
Like, he has a gambling problem.
He kind of does. Because guess what? Like, what is gambling if not what if I just go again, I'll get the right outcome and my life will be better, right? That's what gambling is. And it's like, that is literally what he's doing there. It's like, he said, obviously there are more gambling focused episodes, but especially at the time, I'm guessing that's kind of what it was tapping into. But I just appreciate it because, like I mentioned, Shatner does a very good obsessed, and just like, he's very good with his fix. That's part of the reason why he and Pat Carter, I believe, just don't match up. Like, he's a very physical actor. He's very in of the mind of, you have to touch people, get the physicality down, physical contact, always putting his arm around her and like making sure that that they're a couple just by looking at them. He's very good at like making sure, because he's a stage actor, right? And you have to overperform those things so that they come across from like a distance. And like, that makes a massive amount of difference in terms of like that physicality and getting his character across. But yeah, for him, like, honestly, he owned this episode. He did really good work.
Okay. How about going on to?
Well, if that's the best they could do, this should last about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We will retrace our steps and figure out what's going on.
You've got 5 minutes. Do it.
Do it. Okay, last 5 minutes. How would you change the script if you were in charge of it? Let's reverse the order. Stars, what are your last 5 minutes?
Okay, so I was actually trying to pay attention to exactly when the last 5... I do try and pay attention to exactly when the last 5 minutes starts. I'm pretty sure here it was started when Pat Carter is like starting to like fall under the Thing's spell. And I don't think I would change much, but I think I would just make one small little change, and I would feel like you would probably need to change the actress as well, just so that she can sell this. She sees him. Look, I'm sorry, but she's just not great. I'm sure she's good in other roles, but like, in terms of a match for Shatner's energy, you need someone with some vivacity.
Andrea.
She sees him cradling the machine, and she gets like this kind of look about her face. She leaves the cafe. He's just sitting there doing it over and over and over again, asking it stupid question after inane question. She comes out with a baseball bat, breaks the fucking thing. And she says, ask it a question now. And he can't. It's like, do you want to ask another question of the other machines?
So you're thinking
no,
Sigourney Weaver then?
a little bit of that, like your fucking, like, did IQs just suddenly drop while I was away energy? Yeah, totally. I'm getting that kind of energy. I would like her to have a bit more agency in it and make it so that it isn't a case of, oh, I love you, yeah, I love you. So whatever. Like, I feel like that marriage is going to fall apart for an entirely other reason down the line. But if you give her a bit of agency, suddenly it feels like a more of a equal relationship, and you can still do the thing with the keep the ambiguity by having the older couple come in because they see it broken and then they just collapse to their knees because they don't know what the fuck to do. They're terrified, they're sobbing, they're anxious, and then the cafe owner is just baffled and he asks them if he wants any chicken steak.
So yeah, so I was gonna say, just gonna want chicken steak.
That's my last 5 minutes. What about you guys?
Dan.
So I think the last 5 minutes, I was also kind of keeping an eye on it. I think it's when the mechanic comes in and tracks him down and says, "Hey, your car's ready." So at that point, so our hero is still paranoid, and he decides to ask the machine whether or not he can trust the local mechanic, and he receives the answer. Signs are hazy. But at this point, Pat has successfully talked him out of his own superstition, so they decide to get in the car, drive away, and of course, that fuel pump they just happened to find laying around town wound up being faulty, stranding them on the train tracks. And then the train comes, and that's the end. So there we actually get to be in the Twilight Zone instead of just having a little slice of life vignette episode.
What
Idle, what about you?
What about me? Oh, breaking the order. All right. I would have it mostly play out the same, except for the last bit where the other couple come in, and we'd scrap that and we'd follow our young couple as they get in the car and they drive off and they arrive in another town. It's another day and they walk out, let's go to the cafe, and in the cafe is another penny machine, and they realize actually, and the owner comes over and goes, hey,
they're actually in the Truman Show.
No, but actually we got some chicken.
I got him.
Well, actually, would you like some chicken steaks? And you realize it's the same cafe, it's the same penny machine, and they are actually trapped, and this is the start of a cycle of them not being able to escape the Twilight.
Ridgefield, Ohio.
Yeah.
You'll never escape Ohio.
Exactly.
Well, and then they put in the quarter and they ask, are we ever going to get out of this town? Signs are hazy.
Yeah.
Ohio is the real Twilight Zone. Don't ever go there, people.
Okay, Otto, no getting out of it. You've had time to think now. What's your 5 minutes?
No, I like to go last so I don't steal anyone's. God bless you guys for being married to the gimmick. But my last 5 minutes is the last 5 seconds. The couple comes in, they sit down, and they ask, should we move the bodies so the police can't find them? And they ask these just dark questions. Like, what the hell is going on here?
You ever seen Gladiator movie?
Because
they get in pretty deep.
The whole episode just, it's hard to take it seriously. And like you said, when they come and ask the question, that's the little twist. Ramp it all the way up. Have them be like,
here's a twist.
They've killed for the machine, and now they're back for more. Something really just dark.
Here's the twist on it. I would say like the machine caters its responses with the person. They say, "Where should I hide the body?" And they just says, "Down the road from where you parked the car."
No.
Put it in that young couple's trunk.
Yes, I have found your scapegoats. Scapegoats will be around soon. Okay, let's go on to.
I can show you my rating code.
Schiller rating 3.5. Associational rating norm -3. That's much too low a rating.
Much too low rating.
Seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member of my crew.
Let's have no unsatisfactory ratings among our crew here today. What are we going to give this? Dan, please, your rating criteria for today. I'm sure you.
So I generally like to come up with something glib or alliterative or what have you. And I came up with a couple of great alternate names for this episode in the process, but they won't be my final rating. So just briefly, I'll give you Star Trek 2 Bits, The Wrath of Coin, also aka Kirk Pocket changes the future by saving Edith from a speeding car. But no, we're going to settle on the writer's own words for our rating this time. Gentlemen, how many male members of a honeymoon team out of 10 would you rate this?
Very good.
Oh, that's good.
Very
That's good.
That's a good one. I like that.
Start with you, Dan, please.
My initial pre-rate was 3. I'm going to bring it up. So this episode spoke to me in a strange way. So I thought, why did they choose a newlywed couple? And the answer is they don't, they're still getting to know each other. And in particular, so Shatner's character is on the eve of a big promotion, a big change in responsibility. And he's looking for a little help. And this is the time when he's at his most vulnerable and unsure and uncertain. And Star, something you said really reminded me just of how we are in our youth. And we just sometimes we need a little help. And if we're not careful and we don't rely on the people that are really there to give it to us in a genuine way, then that negative space can be filled by something, evil at worst, but randomness of this little machine can be just as bad. So I thought that it was a point well received, and it took the entire episode for me to really digest it. It's not a hard-hitting episode, but it's watchable. Shatner does fantastic. And I think the message underneath everything, really is something that gives me a little bit of food for thought. So I'm going to raise to a 5.
You're a 5. Okay. Stars.
I forget what my pre-rating was. Do you remember?
Your pre-rating was an 8.
I'm actually going to bump up a little bit to 8.5 male members of a honeymoon team. Shatner's performance here is excellent. The concept is really, really simple, and it's literally 2 sets. There's enough little bits of character. Like, this is what I was kind of missing from the Printer's Devil episode, was little bits of character work, like the little 4-leaf clover on his and the rabbit's foot on his tees. Just like Shatner's mannerisms, even like the slightly wooden actress that they had for his wife, like she kind of contributed because she seemed just like so plain and normal, and then that kind of accentuates what's going on with Shatner's Don Carter or whatever. There's just a lot of there's a lovely amount of restraint and excess going on at the same time. Of just okay, and push it hard, and now pull it back, and push it hard, and now pull it back, and I just appreciated. I don't know. It's a very simple story with, like you said, a moral that doesn't really come through until the end. And it's one of those things like you mentioned, or they have a twist and then another twist, and it's like you get the first twist within the first kind of 3 minutes, almost kind of, because it doesn't really tip its hand. But then the last twist is in the last minute, and that's always a good one. And it just made me think of the entire thing differently. And yeah, it's like, guess what? Me and Otto watched a movie where they character who had a very motto that Don Carter probably would have appreciated hearing: "Carpe diem, seize the day. Don't let other people make your decisions for you, especially not little bobblehead napkin holders."
Yes.
Otto.
I don't think this is a bad episode, but I don't like this episode. I don't hate it, though. When we watched Eye of the Beholder, Dan made a great comment. He said, "This is the first time I felt like I'm in the Twilight Zone, like just a different universe, a different dimension. This felt like it felt like Earth. Like there's no supernatural twist, really. I mean, you could make the claim that, well, actually the answers are really, but I can't take it seriously. And every time they give they spit out generalities and then they hit the music and everyone looks shocked. I'm like, no, I can't. Sorry, I can't take you seriously. And so, like I said at the top, you can go as deep as you want into it. And you could take it seriously. I choose not to because I don't like it. In fact, I think this could have been a one-man play. I might have enjoyed it more. Yeah. I made the comment about Shatner in the past. He makes the room smaller when he walks in. All eyes are on him, and he's the man. And so, he did that in this episode to the point where we even noticed other guys like the guy serving lunch was number 2, perhaps. Or the inanimate object was number 2, perhaps. So, I don't want to go too long. I pre-rated 5. I'll bump this down to a 4.4. I think it absolutely has its pluses and advantages. If I wanted to point to an episode that made a commentary or something worth investigating, I probably would not pick this episode.
I enjoyed it for the most part. I really enjoyed Shatner in this more than I thought I would. I felt he was a good lead for this kind of piece. He played paranoid very well. He played obsessive very well. He was definitely sort of the driving force that we wanted from this kind of episode too. And it was more focused on him than it was the mystery, which will probably please William Shatner very much. But yeah, I kind of agree with what you say, Otto, as well, in that it wasn't Twilight Zone-y enough for me. But I suppose that is like what, it's a contradiction, because I tell people off when they say, like, it doesn't feel like Star Trek to me. I'm like, well, it can be whatever you want. And then
Right.
Twilight Zone is
not my
literally...
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally the antithesis of that. But I don't know. Yeah, you're right. This could have just happened in a small town somewhere. Like, someone got paranoid over the results, and probably has happened. Someone has probably read a horoscope and taken that to heart and felt like, well, that's what they told me. This it feels maybe a bit too real. I enjoyed watching it. But I think it sits at a 6 for me. Shatner carries a lot of that. The plot itself is interesting enough to go, is there something else here? But by the time you get to the end, you're a bit like, oh, people are just dumb. And that's kind of the crux of it. I just point out,
we were asked, were we all superstitious? And every one of us said no. I feel like it plays very differently to a superstitious audience.
You asked this for a different audience, then it could be a different story.
By the way, 4.4 male members of the honeymoon team. I apologize.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I apologize. Well, that brings this whole episode to a 6 average between the four of us, which I think is fairly representative. I should list these to where but you know what's on top. We know what's on top. Anyway, please, Mr. Serling, what are we going to be watching next week?
Next week, in this cramped and musty attic, you'll find two men tripping over relics of the past as they try to reconcile the distorted ledger of their lives. Neville Brand and George Takei star in the encounter. Don't miss out, or you'll be waiting 50 years for another chance.
And on that note, we will see you next time. Stay paranoid.